Jacqueline Du Pré stopped playing the cello when she was 28 years old, a victim of multiple sclerosis. She died at the age of 42 after 14 years of unremitting illness. Her story is so unusual, her gift so unexplainable, and the sudden and tragic end to it so beyond understanding, that the world had to invent its own myths, and then, as the years went by, to embellish them. In the process, the stories have projected an image of her character that bears less and less resemblance to the real person, who so caught the public imagination and who meant so much to so many people. Who was the real Jacqueline Du Pré?
Jacqueline Du Pré was a creature like none other. The problem with talking about Jackie is there is no frame of reference, you see. Both musically, cellistically, as a personality, you can't compare her to anyone.
It didn't fall into any category. Jackie didn't fall into any particular category. It was 10 o'clock on a Thursday, there was a rehearsal. Oh, okay, what am I playing? Oh, I'm playing Dvorak today. Okay, it's Dvorak. If it was Elgar, it'd be Elgar. It didn't matter. It was so well already, it was done. It was done before she even, I think she was done before she was born.
Those people who weren't fortunate enough to hear her live missed an experience that is indescribable, because that's just some things, very few, but some things are beyond words. And Jacqueline Du Pré was a creature beyond words.
Because it's all coming from inside, you know. And I have always, how do you say, I always heard in her music the person she is. For me, I think music never lies, you know. The way she played, the reason why she moves one so much is because there's something so pure and so truthful in her, you know. And that's also, I feel, you know, I've always felt her as a person was like that. I mean, when you look at her in her eyes, everything, it's the same the way she is, you know, when she is with a cello. For me, it's always the same.
Did you love her?
Oh, I love her tremendously, yes. Yeah, I missed her terribly.
In some ways, I think she was probably the greatest human being I ever met. Without any pretense, she was simple, she was loving, she was carefree, she smiled. We all knew her as Smiley. That was her nickname. I think that when it comes to the playing, the actual playing itself, there was a natural gift that she was born with that is hard to explain. The only way I can explain it a little bit is essentially in 3 words: the mind, the heart, and the stomach. She played mainly from the stomach. It was so from the stomach sometimes that you said, wow, that's unbelievable. How did she do that? And then sometimes it was from the heart and you went, how did she do that? The intellect was not something that she confronted necessarily. She didn't need to. It was so natural. The extension of music making, the sound that came out of her being, it wasn't a cello, it was really her being, was just completely natural. It had no inhibitions. At that moment, there was no other way to hear that phrase or to see her play it that way. There was no question. That's what you had to do. That's what it was. That's the cello, that instrument, that piece, that moment. That's it. When you went away and you started thinking about it, I said, wow, that was amazing.
She was like a very active conversationalist. And this, of course, for chamber music was unique. I have never met somebody I hadn't met before, nor since, who was such a musical conversationalist.
I've never seen anybody do it to that extreme. Never.
It came out in her musical collaboration also. In other words, when she played music, she wasn't giving just of herself, but she was giving to her collaborator, whether it was Daniel on the piano, whether it was myself conducting, accompanying her, whether in a trio with Pinky. She gave and took without even knowing about it, in the most instinctive manner.
It's called genius. Just pure, unadulterated talent, genius. Phenomenon. By the way, when we played trios, I'll never forget the first time we went on stage, Daniel and I might as well gone away someplace else. The command, she went on, a door opened to that stage, and the command behind the back was just like this. It was, it was so powerful. I said, "What's going on?" She said, "She's walking to play." I said, "Really? She's going out to play?" It was amazing. It's like, that's it. The world was hers. That stage was Jackie.
It was a kind of personality that absolutely forced you to concentrate on her. Whether it was intimate, contemplative music, or very exuberant. It was not just a question, what I'm trying to say is it was not just a question of virtuoso, loud, full of temperament. Even in the quiet moments, there was something very, very, like lens, like film lens that really go to the point.
Orchestral musicians loved her. People who had never spoken to her. People sitting behind her, just hearing her play. I remember there was not an intermission at a rehearsal that they just wouldn't crowd around her. That's when she would ape and play Dr. Zhivago and all that. But it's always giving.
I think that everybody who was close to her was terribly attracted to her and in a subconscious way wished they could be like she was.
Well, because of her sweetness that was so sincere, you just had to meet Jackie and you were all for her. On top of it, then you heard her playing also. So it was a, like you said, American, a double whammy.
Ich würde denken, das ist gar nicht möglich. Ich habe zuerst, als ich die beiden, nämlich Jacqueline und Daniel Barenboim zusammen in Italien hörte, habe ich gedacht, ist das möglich? Gibt es so etwas überhaupt? Ich hatte das vorher nie in dieser Art gehört, diese Werke. Das heißt, gefüllt mit Temperament, nicht nur mit einer unaufhaltsamen Art, sich zu offenbaren dem Publikum, sondern eben auch mit dem passenden, mit dem stimmenden Ausdruck, der in diese Stücke reingehörte. Und das ist etwas, was man ja nicht so häufig erfährt. Und das war so überwältigend, dass ich gleich hinterher darauf aus war, die beiden zu sehen und zu sprechen. Und da war ich dann entzückt davon, was für ein selbstverständliches, natürliches Wesen sie war. Vollkommen unprätentiös, sehr witzig, sehr liebenswürdig in jeder Beziehung.
The first time I saw her was in the BBC studios in Maida Vale. This gorgeous blonde Not an elegant creature in any way, very loose-limbed young lady came into the studio. And you remember made a very long studio. She was she had quite a long walk with her cello held aloft and a rapturous smile on her face, although she hadn't met the BBC Symphony Orchestra before. And I believe Norman Del Mar was conducting and introduced her, and she sat down, you see, and I'd heard of Jacqueline Du Pré, but one is a little bit suspicious of these very famous people, so I waited till I heard the first note, and of course that piece starts with the cello alone. And I was riveted to her, absolutely knocked out, instant. But not only me. The whole orchestra was silenced. They were silenced by Elgar anyway to start with, but they were totally under her spell immediately. Now that's a strange thing for a lady sitting with her back to the audience. Just the beauty of the sound, the immense intensity, and the physical presence was very, very powerful. You know, I was so knocked out by it that I didn't talk to her. I was almost unable to applaud. I was so knocked out.
I think the first encounter with her playing was at a summer, then newly created festival called Mostly Mozart, which had just gotten underway, and she came and played the Haydn Concerto in the red dress, in her favorite red dress. And I heard it and I couldn't believe my ears. I just couldn't believe it. I didn't agree with a lot of it. I mean, it was very Brahmsy in its approach, but it didn't matter. Nothing mattered.
First of all, she had complete control over her instrument. Jackie could, in the last minute, without thinking, do things musically just because that had to be in that particular moment. Another person would have to practice 8 hours to make the same rubato. Jackie just did it because that's what came at that very moment.
I have to say one thing, it's very important to say. Talking about Jackie is very difficult because not only was she a person like none other, but it all comes out sounding as if you're talking about this perfect creature. And I don't want it to come out that way. That's not the way I think of Jackie when I think about her. I don't think about her as being perfect. I think about her as being unique, and I miss her. I miss that in her which was unique. Her lack of pretense, of falseness. This, you see, she had a peculiar life. She developed in a peculiar way, and she didn't learn what we all learn going to school. You know, how to give the teacher what he wants, not necessarily the truth, what he wants. Jackie didn't give people what they wanted. Maybe what they wanted was a byproduct, and it worked out okay. But what she actually did was she just gave them herself, who she was, the truth of who she was, the truth of what she saw, and musically the truth of what she felt and what she heard. You know, and because she was great, that truth was a great truth. You know, we all miss that.